We are on a double Parsha this week, and we will finally catch up to the Parshas that are in the land of Israel. And the land of Israel has always been, so far, for many, many months, always one ahead of us. Because it happened with Passover. It was a little, So in any case, now finally, we catch up, and we complete the book of Numbers in this week's Parsha. It's a double Parsha called Matot-Massi. But we're going to focus on the last of the Parsha, and I don't know according to what books you have. Masei, which means travels, or I'm not sure actually how they translate it. Journeys, these are the journeys, so I'll tell you what chapter it is, though. Okay, it's going to be on chapter 33, verse 1. Okay? Chapter 33, verse 1. You have 3 seconds to get there. Okay.
1, 2, 3. Okay.
Are you guys there? Are you guys there? You guys. Chapter 33, verse 1. Don't talk. Don't say about that. Open up the book and get on the page. Okay. That's okay. I'm just joking with them. You know I'm just joking with you, right? Okay. Okay. All right. They don't. So let's just I'll put my book in front of the camera. All right. So it talks about the travelings of all of the encampments of all of the children of Israel, and just look at it. You just got to look at this for a minute, okay? And these are the sojournings, and the following I'm going to read according to my translation here, okay, which comes from the Gutnick translation, okay. The following are the journeys of the children of Israel by which they left the land of Egypt in their regiments by the hand of Moses, Moshe, and Aaron. Moshe recorded the starting points of their journeys given by the word of God. The following were their journeys and their starting points. Okay? So Moshe writes their motzi'ehem, their goings out, and their travelings, al pi Hashem, and these are their travelings, and now we have a list. Okay? I'm just going to take you through them, not all of them, okay? But you got to just get a little gist here of what's going on. Okay? So they journeyed from Ramses in the first month on the 15th day of the first month. That's the day following the Passover offering. That's the day that they left Egypt, right? And the children of Israel left triumphantly in the presence of all of the Egyptians. The Egyptians were busy burying their dead because God had struck the firstborn and had performed acts of judgment upon their gods. Verse 2, actually verse 5. Verse 5, the children of Israel journeyed from Ramses and camped at Sukkot. They journeyed from Sukkot and went to Asam, in the edge of the desert. They journeyed from Asam and settled in the mouth of the rocks opposite Baal-Zephon, and they camped in front of Migdal. Going to go on a little bit more. Verse 8, they journeyed from the rocks. So it's translated here, from the rocks. I don't know how you guys got it. And crossed through the sea in the desert. They walked for 3 days in the Asam desert and camped at Marah. They journeyed from Marah and camped at Elim. In Elim, there were 12 springs of water and 70 palm trees. They camped there. Verse 10, they journeyed from Elim and camped by the Red Sea. 11, they journeyed from the Red Sea and camped in the desert of Sin. Verse 12, they journeyed from the desert of Sin and camped at Dophka. They journeyed from Dophka and went to Alush, and journeyed from Alush to Rephidim, and there was no water for people to drink. They journeyed from Rephidim and camped in the Sinai desert. Okay, it goes on and on and on. And if you list it, the net number of encampments, does anybody have the total number? What? 42. Excellent. Very good. 42. Okay, very, very significant number. Okay, 42. So basically, if you count up all of the places, basically there were 42 places where the Jewish people encamped and traveled through in the desert. And okay, now you got, now I always say this and I can't say it enough, okay? The Torah is not a history book, okay? It's not a book about where they traveled from, because you couldn't even find these places if you wanted to, if you'd go out there, okay? There's no traces, there's no sign, right? There's no spray-painted graffiti. Moshe was here. You won't find it, okay? So you have to ask the question, and Hasidic thought always ask the question, what is the significance and what is the relevance of these teaching, of listing each and every one of the 42 places in the desert. Okay? So the Ramban, Nachmanides, 1,000 years ago, he writes that the secret of these places is very deep. Very deep. We have to just, and you can't even grasp the full meaning. Okay? And but comes the Baal Shem Tov, and he puts us to a place which is unbelievably dynamic, a place where we need to go. Okay? So he says, I'm going to read it in Hebrew. I tried to find a translation. They don't have a translation of it. The Baal Shem Tov, who was the founder of the Hasidic movement, his name was Rabbi Yisrael ben Rabbi Eliezer, who founded, in Europe, the town of Medjugorje, and all of the Hasidic Rebbe's came after him. And he very, very much innovated, serving God with joy and the relevance and the meaning of the entire Torah and its significance for every person. And so he says, all of the travelings, all of the journeys were 42, as we do know. And they are by each and every individual from the day that he is born until he goes to his world. Now, to understand that, he says that we look at from the day of a person's birth and when he went out from the womb of his mother, that is called the aspect of going out of Egypt. It's not too far from us to go ahead and picture, as I always do to teach people, that when they went through the sea was the birth canal. It was the beginning of the birth and the entire birth canal and the birth of a nation. But it's the birth of an individual as well, going out. So we look at the time of a person being born into this world, and we look at the Chumash, and we look at the 5 books of Moses, and we see, okay, there's a going out of Egypt. And after that, each and every person goes from journey to journey, from encampment to encampment, until they come to the land of Israel, to Eretz HaChaim HaElyona, the land of Israel, which is the person's full potential, their final resting place, the person where they reach completion, complete enlightenment. And like what it writes in the Pasuk, and there's a verse that says, and it brings it down much earlier in Parshat Ba'alosecha in Vayikra, the end of Vayikra, that it brings down that the clouds had gone before the Jewish people. Al pi Hashem yachanu, al pi Hashem yisau. Believe me, I look at this I say this to myself in my mind all the time. By the mouth of Hashem they traveled, and by the mouth of Hashem they encamped. Okay? When I'm in traffic, I'm all the time like that, especially when I'm late. Okay? Because sometimes you're not in sync with the lights. There's 2 kinds of tests. They ask Avram Avinu, about Abraham. We know in tradition that he went through 10 tests. Okay? And we can understand some of them are very significant tests because there's a do involved. Look at the last one, go sacrifice your son. Okay? Or leave your land. Okay? Yeah.
How old was Isaac when he was going to sacrifice him?
I'm looking at, it's a good question. I'm looking at 38 years old. 36, maybe 36 or 38. I'm not sure. He got married at 40, so he was 37. Okay, and that's when after the sacrifice that he was told about Rivka being born, and then they went to go get her 3 years later. Okay? So in any case, there's some tests of Abraham that we see are go and do, right? And some tests are not. What kind of tests are they? It's not something that it was in his control or in his power. To go sacrifice your son was in his power. To leave the land where his father was in his power. But there were some tests that were not. Anybody want to come up with some of those? Anybody? What?
Patience.
Which? Yes, it is. But which? Give me some examples of some of those 10. One of those 10 tests that wasn't totally in his power. What? Having a son that was not a test.
Waiting
for a son.
Praying, that was not one of his tests, believe it or not.
Going to the barber.
When did he do that? How about when Sarah was abducted by Paro? He goes to Egypt, and all of a sudden the van pulls by, the secret police pulls by, and then they escort him, and they take him in the limo, and Sarah in the limo, and they go to the palace. And, sounds like...
When Sarah told him throw Ishmael, it was feeling sad.
Okay, that was a do. It was. Listen, they're all challenges. A test is a challenge. Hello.
Okay.
Hello. Does anybody here not have any challenges?
What about going
Doors that way. Okay.
What about going to save his cousin?
Save his cousin was a go and do. But let's say Sarah gets abducted twice. Okay, just look at that one. Also, he gets into the land of Canaan. When God tells him, I want you to go to a land that I will show you, and he finally gets into that land, and there's a drought in the land. It's not in his power. Okay? It's a test. It was a test. The idea really is like what you said, kind of, patience. It's kind of like you gotta sit tight. You gotta accept it with love. That's a big one. Accept this shift, this experience with love. Some of them are go and do. Some of them are this is what's happening. You got to accept it with love. You're not thinking, I'm late, I'm supposed to be somewhere, every single light is red, I can get really frustrated. But plus the guy always in the left lane is always doing 30 and it's a 40 zone, right? And he's just cruising along, who knows what he's doing, right? And he's in the right lane. No, he's in the left lane, whatever. Al pi Hashem yachanu, al pi Hashem yisav. According to the mouth of God, they traveled. According to the mouth of God, they camped. That's also for us. Okay? Some tests are go and do, and some tests are you got to accept it. You got to accept it, right? So here is an unbelievable insight here, okay? That every single time that they traveled, every single one of those 42 spots that the Jewish people are in, that you can read this, and they went to here, and they went to here, and they went to there, applies to all of us. It's an unbelievable thing. Now, it's not a literal traveling, because I've only moved 12 times in my life, Rabbi. Does that mean I have another 30? Right? No, it doesn't mean that, okay? I'll give you some examples, okay? But the idea here is, just as you see how, in the entire story, of the entire 5 books of Moses is really one story. You could put it on 2 toes, not even 1 foot. Right? It's 2 words. It's exile. It's redemption. It's all about that. And what is exile? Right? Exile is a place where you don't see God. And redemption is obviously you feel totally connected. Disconnect, connect. Entire Chumash. Right there. We can close the book and go home. Okay? So the entire Chumash is like that, and it's an unbelievable dynamic that these 42 places are places where all of us need to travel because the entire Chumash is about one family that leaves the land of Israel. They become a great nation, and comes back. Storyline. Leaves, comes back. Right? The end of the Chumash is they're just about to come, and Joshua's takes over, and he's just about to lead the people into the land of Israel. Such is our own personal journey, the journey of the soul when it comes into this world. It has to go through 42 steps. Let's look at it as the 42 steps, 42 significant lessons, 42 insights, 42 journeys that a person has to go through in their lives in order till they reach completion, till they reach their own personal land of Israel. It's an unbelievable insight. Now you're probably thinking, where am I? Right? Okay? And the real idea is if, I explain to some people, because I teach Jewish mysticism over there on the south side, and I teach them, on 1 foot, a couple of feet. You need a couple of feet for this one. But on 1 foot, you could teach that in mysticism, the Torah, what we're here for, all of us, are coming from an unrefined vessel to being a refined vessel. God created us. He made a creation in order to bestow pleasure. He made a creation in order to bestow pleasure. And therefore, instantly was created a vessel that has to receive that pleasure. But in order to receive that pleasure in the right way, the person, let's look at it as an individual, has to go ahead and earn it, because it can't be a freebie. No freebies, because then doesn't mean anything. It has to mean something. It has to be an acquisition. It has to be you worked for it, because then you feel good about it. It's a big, huge other principle. We won't get into it, called the bread of shame. So God gives you an unrefined vessel, and you got to go through 42 journeys in order to become that refined vessel, where you can actually receive the divine light. Does it make sense to you? Feel free to ask any questions. The other leg that I teach people is, and it's about really all of us, and it's all the time, okay? It's katnut and gadlut. In Hebrew, katnut is immaturity versus maturity, okay? Most people are somewhere in between. As everybody can see a small child. Everybody knows they're immature. Well, you can't have the candy now. You have to eat your growing food before you get the lollipop, right? Doesn't understand, but we do, right? And we're very much the same way. We're very much the same way with God, okay? So God, you have to go in steps. So we're moving from either a unrefined vessel to a refined vessel. Baruch Hashem, thank God. Or we're going from immaturity to maturity in some degradation. Okay? So in these travelings, as you'll see, and you go through, there's a lot of problems that the Jewish people encountered, didn't they? A lot of problems. How many tests? How many times did they test God in the desert? Anybody know? Give me the magic number. 10. Okay. 10 tests. 10 times. 10 places where things just went bad, right? If it wasn't the fire all of a sudden just consuming him, and they go, Moshe, we're all burning up. There's some kind of fire around the camp. It was snakes. If it wasn't snakes, it was some disease, pestilence, or some plague. Because everybody's murmuring in the tents about if it's not the food, it's the meat. If it's not the meat, it's the water. If it's not the water, it's the traveling. If it's not the traveling, it's because of the fact that they didn't go to the bathroom for 38 years. Right? That's right. That was one of them. That was when the snakes came. They're like, come on. We can't just keep eating, and it's just like, we feel like it's gonna add up, man. We're gonna explode here. It's been 38 years, I ate some, manna 38 years ago and haven't seen it since. I'd like. Charmin was out of business. Okay. So by the way, we actually have to go into another little micro of these 48. Welcome to your 42 levels. Welcome to your journey. Okay? It's in the Torah. Now the question is, how do you get it out of the words, and what do the words mean, and where am I? I'll give you a couple examples. But another little point that the Baal Shem Tov goes into, that the 42 travelings are really also in the same aspect, the same pattern, the same formula of the Sefira Omer that we count, actually. We count in between Passover to Shavuos 49 days. That's not 42, Rabbi. You got to think about this. Shabbos is really always a culmination of all of the days before it. It's like an inclusive aspect. But if you count every single day without Shabbos, you would end up with 42. The 42 are the essential, because that's when you really do the work. Shabbos is almost like a freebie. But in any case here, he brings down actually an example, okay, that all of the travelings that are in the Torah to teach the straight way, how a person should go. He has to know the way how to behave in his entire life, how to travel, how to go from place to place. He has to know that each and every one of those travelings There's an aspect of holiness and there's an aspect of Kedusha. There's a special light that is hidden in that stage of your life, in that challenge. And I'm talking about the challenges, okay? Things are going smooth, you're traveling, you're cruising. It's when you stop. Believe me, it's when you stop and you're stuck. When you have that challenge, how do you take it? Abraham Avinu, do you accept it with love? How do you get to take it? Okay, and we're going to discuss that, okay? But yeah, let me just give you one little example. One of the places that they traveled to was called Kivrot HaTa'ava. Kivrot HaTa'ava, which is basically a place where they desired meat. They came to Moshe and said, we want meat. And Moshe says, okay, we're going to get meat for 30 days. Not one day, not two. You got meat for 30 days. They had meat for 30 days, and at the end of 30 days, it was coming out of their nose, and they were just exploding, and a lot of people died. And they called the name of that place Burial Place of Desire. So here he brings the unbelievable possible energy that was located in that place. What they could have grasped, they did. It's just it came out warped because of their level of immaturity, because they're unrefined vessel. Because if you're an unrefined vessel, the light that comes in comes out warped all the time. Okay? But it's okay because you know something, the universe, the world is user-friendly. God is guiding you in a place where you won't completely shatter. He'll stretch you. He'll stretch it to the end. But you won't, God willing, completely break. Okay? So they say, he said this, Mi shabola midas chachma, somebody who comes to the quality of wisdom, then is nullified from him all of the physical desires because of his great attachment to the divine. And that is why they called it Kivrot HaTaiva, the burial place of desire, was because some people, those who could ride the wave, those who could access the light, those who plugged into the illumination, what was going on there, that in that place there was an unbelievable wellspring of wisdom that would take a person beyond being influenced by the physical desires. And those people who were a lower nature, of course, being in an unrefined vessel, they desired the meat, they went after the meat, and then whatever happened to them. Okay? But just to give you that example here, that's one example. Okay? One example is that they could have done this, but because of their deeds, things got messed up. Okay? It was all because of their deeds is what happened. Okay? It's based on the deeds, believe it or not. So now let's get into something great that I wanted to bring you from Rabbi Nachman, okay? Which I think that Rod emailed to you, okay? So it's a fantastic Torah number 40. So he brings down something so deep. Because you have to ask, when you think about it, really they didn't need to go through these 42 places in the desert. They didn't need to, right? God wanted to bring them right away, give them the Torah and go. They traveled, as a matter of fact, when they left Mount Sinai, they traveled I think it was a 9-day distance or something in 3 days or something, like an incredible distance in a real short amount of time. They were heading real fast. But anyways, besides the point. So it is brought here in the Asara Mamaro, there's a certain sefer, Ele Maseh, these are the sojournings of the Israelites. So the word brings down here, the first word of this parsha is Ele. Ele is a very significant word. And a lot of times you'll see in the 5 books of Moses where we see one Hebrew word, and then we look through and scan through the entire Chumash, actually they have it brought down to us, that there's the same word that's used in another place in the Torah. And there's another place where this word Ele, which means these, is brought. Where is it brought? Also, but that's not what they say here. But it's good. We'll have to think about that one. Okay? Here it says, Ele maseh b'nei Yisrael, b'shvil shechatau be'ele elokecha Yisrael. Because that they sinned with Ele, these are your gods, Israel. In the sin of the golden calf, 40 days, Moshe didn't come down. People got nervous, panicked. All kinds of things were happening. All of a sudden they jump to an extreme conclusion. Moses is dead, we need a new God. The Erev Rav, the mixed multitude who were very happily to initiate some other vehicle to go ahead and receive the divine light, got together gold and whatever the plans that they made and worked on the weaker people of Israel to go ahead and institute a new campaign to get somebody else or something else. And then it was produced through various means, this golden calf. And when the golden calf came out of the fire, so they all said, These is your God, Israel. That's why it says Eile. Who is talking when you say Eile? It didn't say the Jewish people weren't saying it. They weren't saying, this is our God. These is your God, Israel. Eile Elokecha, this is your God, Israel. Eile. Eile, by the sin of the golden calf. Eile, by the travelings. So here Rabbi Nachman brings an astounding, I don't know if we're going to be able to take it, but take it easy. Just chill. Nimsa, he says, we see then that all of a person's journeys are because of a blemish in faith, i.e., in essence, an aspect of idolatry. Okay? And this is a basic thought, and Hasidic thought, and we do work like this. Okay? For if he had believed with a perfect faith that God could provide him with all his needs at home, he would certainly not have to set out on a journey. So consequently, the journey indicates a blemish in faith, i.e., an aspect of idolatry. Now, you got to work with me here. Just chill for a second. But you got to think it. You got to start to introduce it because it's all about the thoughts that we think. And it's because you really, when you think about it, the second commandment, don't worship any other gods, seems like for many people, that's a remote thing. No one's worshiping gods. No one's bowing down to statues these days. But it's not true. It's not true. If anybody has faith in something else other than God for even a slight thing, even the most slightest degree, according to all the Hasidic masters, according to the holy rabbis, that is an aspect in thought of idolatry. Because God is running every single thing, every single second of our lives. Every single thing, your parnasa, your wealth, your health, every single thing is completely run to the minutest detail, orchestrated to perfection for you and your life and for your growth. Nothing is nature. Nature does not exist. As a matter of fact, the numerical value of ha-teva, which is nature, is the same numerical value as God, Elohim, if you go and add it up. Okay? So really, who's running the show? God is absolutely. When we put our faith in something else other than God, what happens? Well, many things happen. One thing is God says, well, you just vacated a space and you took me out of the picture. I'll let you go ahead and rely on that if you think that's what you're relying on. It's very deep. It's very deep. Because in our lives, a lot of times because of habit, we tend to think, okay, we're going to rely on this or we'll rely on that, and I don't want to get into specific examples. But each person has to do their own work and has to try to chisel away and cut away and reevaluate all the things that they might have been believing in or relying on up until now in their lives. But in any case, the slightest taking away of faith that God is completely running our lives is an aspect of idolatry. So because of that, so God says, then you have to travel. Because you don't believe in me, listen, we're all faced with it. If a person would really believe, because really it's decreed at the head of the year in Rosh Hashanah, that all your parnasa is all guaranteed, it's already written in a book. It's already written. So if you really believe that really, you can sell hot water bottles out of your front house, you could bake cookies and make your parnasa, baking cookies in your house, brownies, gluten-free, okay? You don't need to go. Listen, but don't freak out. We have many places where our rabbis specifically put themselves in exile. We had huge rabbis in Europe. One was named the Vilna Gaon, disguised himself as a commoner and went traveling all over Europe. What are you going to say? He had lack of faith? There was Rabbi Elimelech and Rav Zusha, Hasidic rabbis, also decided to go travel about. They disguised themselves and no one would recognize them, to put themselves in exile. And they did it for various tikkunim, as what he says here at the end, the next page, okay? The next page says, interestingly enough, because Hashem, he says, okay, you didn't trust in me, therefore get out. He's not punishing. Therefore you got to travel, because you didn't believe in me. You don't have faith in me. I can bring you your parnasa at home. Okay? Therefore, get it. It's not like that. Really what it is the exact tikkun is in the traveling itself. As he says in the next page here in the second paragraph. And by virtue of his wandering, he rectifies the wandering he caused above, as it were. Okay? In other words, when he travels, and he has to travel, that is going to fix his emunah. He doesn't have emunah, therefore he has to travel, because he really didn't have emunah. He worshipped the golden calf in a certain light aspect, in a certain formula. So therefore, he has to travel, but in that traveling itself comes the tikkun. All the time God uses that. What? Yeah, it's the second page. Second paragraph. By virtue of his wandering, he rectifies the wandering he caused above. Okay, because really what happens is, sadly enough, when a person doesn't believe in God, and therefore he has to wander, he causes God to wander. What happens here really is an exile. Like we say, it's either exile or it's redemption. God even goes into exile. What it means? You can't see God. Or you're blocking God. You're blocking God from manifesting. You block God with our immaturity from manifesting the way He really could. So therefore, you gotta travel. If you believe that, go travel. So how does the traveling that the person has to do, the wandering, how does it fix his emunah? How does it fix his emunah? A lot of times people, they live in their houses, they live in their little neighborhoods, they're very complacent, right? You call that kind of person, even these days, definitely these days, even in those days, person who never left his shtetl, you'd say he's not a maven. He's not a maven. Maven means he doesn't really know. He's not very worldly. He doesn't really understand what's going on. Yes, you have to get out of the comfort zone. When you get out of the comfort zone, what happens? You have to travel. What was the word? Uncomfortable. There's another word. Vulnerable. Person is vulnerable. Okay? My Rosh Yeshiva, he once, my Rosh Yeshiva told us a story that his Rebbe would, sometimes he would send guys to distant places on Friday to go. You have to go to this, you got to raise money and find a place for Shabbos, of course, because it's Friday. He'd send students from his yeshiva to some Hooper's-Dorton place, and they got to go ahead and find. Not only got to try to raise money for the yeshiva, they got to find a place for Shabbos. So they got to wander door to door looking for mezuzah. They got no place. They're completely vulnerable. Maybe at least he's got somebody else there. But listen, I left LA when I was just turning 19 years old. Alone, packed all my bags, quit the job, sold the car. Something going on over there? Someone hiccuped? Okay. I'm watching you! Okay. I left home at 19 years old. I look back at it, I'm like, wow, it was crazy. What was inside of me? Okay, I had some kind of bug, okay? Some kind of idea, go and travel. And I didn't even go to Israel because I didn't even know anything about Israel. Very little about Israel, okay? I traveled all around Europe. I was in places where I thought I was going to get eaten alive, okay? Really, I thought I was in really dungy places. And here I was, a clean-cut California kid, I walk into the youth hostel in the morning. Hi, guys. And these guys are waking up, They looked like they were going to eat me for breakfast, okay? All around Europe, very vulnerable. But I saw at the end, God was with me. Because what happens when you travel, then you have an opportunity to see God in your life. Yeah.
You save a lot of money to travel at that age, or you were rich?
No, I wasn't rich. It cost a lot. But, whatever, I made it. It's much more expensive nowadays. It was youth hostels. I had to sleep once in a train station, okay? Because they didn't have it. There was no accommodation. It was great. It was great. I wouldn't do it anymore. It was great. Okay. Backpacking for me was nerdish. So I had big duffel bags that I slept and I built my arms like that. Okay, I was crazy. Okay. In any case, I saw God. Okay, because He led me here, He led me there. Afterwards, okay, and that's what gets into the next point. But just this one point here for now. This point right here for now is because you have to travel and in your traveling, of course, you're going to be in situations where those guys, my Rosh Hashiva sent to this outer town, Hoopersdorten place, Erev Shabbos, they got to knock on this guy's door. Hi, we need a place for Shabbos. You guys, the only thing I have for Shabbos is like this challah and a can of fish. You can stay. And they all shared this one can of fish the whole Shabbos, and they were satisfied. Somehow, for some reason, they weren't hungry. Bizarre. Okay? Right? So, you go in these situations, in wild situations, and out of your comfort zone, and only then are you going to see God. Only then is your Emunah going to be stronger. Okay? Some people, no, I never leave my comfort zone, right? No. It's not about that. And then we come to now the explanation. There's a great Rashi, okay? The Rashi, in the beginning there, he explains, okay? Mashal HaMelech, he brings a parable of a king that his son was sick and he had to bring him to a very far place for his healing. And once that he was coming back, on their way back after the son got healed, so then his father started to go ahead and count all of the places. That's why we're counting all of these places, by the way. You're counting these 42. Why is God going over every single one of these 42? So Rashi, the 11th century commentator, is saying, bringing this from an earlier text, that the parable of a king who's bringing his son after he's healed on his way back, and he's counting. They're going back, showing. Do you remember here? Here we slept and we were cold. It was very cold that night. You remember here you had a headache. Do you remember here we were here and the roof caved in? Do you remember here this would happen and this would happen? And he was like counting each and every place. Do you remember here, this would happen here, you got bitten by bugs, the mosquitoes. Every single place. And this is the idea here. The idea here is for us, is that each and every single one of the places, the positions in our lives, these 42 steps in all of our lives, okay? God, in the end of days, after the healing, okay, when we're, God willing, will be refined souls, okay? And we'll reach that completion, and we reach our own personal land of Israel. God will show us how you know why you had to lose that job? You had to lose that job because of this. You know why this relationship didn't work out and you had to get that divorce? You know why this, God forbid, this child died? You know why you lost your parent here? You know why each and every person, God is going to go ahead and count each and every one of us exactly why it happened and what he needed to happen and the unbelievable lesson that was learned and the unbelievable what you gained from each and every single one of those steps in life. So just like here, we enumerate the 42 steps. Each and every one of us, God is going to count and tell you, you know why you had to lose, and everything's going to make complete and total sense. And you're going to go, oh, I got it. Or we can do what we really have to do. And this comes to an unbelievable midrash. Unbelievable midrash. It sinks in me all the time. I don't know if I gave this class before. Maybe I did. Okay, thank you. This is... So it comes from the Midrash Rabbah. It says, Amar Rabbi Yitzhak bar Marion, this... He says, the verses come to teach. If a person does a mitzvah, he should do it with the complete and total heart. He has to do it with every single thing he's got. Because now why? Because Reuven, he takes three people that we have in the Chumash. He has Reuven, Aaron, and Boaz. Reuven, you remember Reuven? Anybody know anything about Reuven? What about Reuven? First son of Yaakov.
Yeah.
What did he do?
He did something bad.
He did something bad. He also did something good.
Yeah, I found a way not to kill Joseph.
Ah, beautiful. So here's how the language is. Follow me. Okay? That if Reuben would know what God would write about him in the 5 books of Moses, if Reuven at the time would know about it, right? Because it says in Genesis, and Reuben heard, right, what the brothers were conspiring against Joseph, and he saved them from their hand. He says, don't kill him, throw him in the hole. If Reuben would have known that they were going to write that about him in the Chumash, he would have put him on his shoulders and carried him right to his father in front of everybody. He would have told them all where they can go, and he says no. Hayamolichu etzel aviv, right then and there. Ilu haya yodea Aaron. If Aaron, now Aaron we know about. Aaron, actually Moshe at the burning bush was arguing with God for 7 days, right? He didn't want to go. He didn't want to go. 7 days. Can you imagine how many times can you say no? Right? For 7 days, he finally, he's told, you got to go back. You got to go back and get the Jewish people out. He's on his way to go get the Jewish people. And God tells him, Aaron is coming to greet you. And he's happy. And Aaron comes to greet him, and Aaron is happy. And the verse said so. But if Aaron would have known that the Kodesh Baruch Hu would write about him, behold, here comes Aaron, he's coming to meet you. If Aaron would have known that, he would have brought a 50-piece band. He would have brought a whole entourage of musicians and dancers to greet Moshe. He was happy. It says he was happy in his heart. If he would have known, he would have done it much more. Okay? And then we have the third, okay? If Boaz, remember Boaz? Boaz in the book of Ruth. Boaz was the field, the owner of all the crops, running the show. He was the big boss. All right? And here comes Ruth, this strange Moabite woman. Who's that Moabite woman? What's her, right? But Ruth, what does Boaz do? He extends himself. You know what he does? He gives her some grain. He gives her some cereal. Give her a bowl of cereal. Right? Everybody else is kicking her, right? Throwing rocks at her. Give her a bowl of cereal, man. Right? If he would have known that, would have wrote about that in the Megillah, right? He would have mamish just slaughtered a fat cow, and made steaks. Would have done barbecue big time. Right? If he would have known. Right? There's lots to go into this. Okay? And the point is it's not that they would have, they would have done it greater for their own publicity. That's not the poor purpose. They don't do, if they would have known, they would have done it bigger. It's not because, if they knew they were right about me, I would have done. That's not the point. Every single time, every single thing that these tzaddikim, that these righteous people do, they do it completely l'shem shamayim. They're doing it completely for what we have, and a huge function and a huge direction of our life, which is called in order to fix the Shekhinah. Okay? All the tzaddikim know this. All those who learn the inner wisdom know that every single action is only for one purpose and one purpose only, and that's to fix the Shekhinah. The Shekhinah is the divine presence. In order to fix the receptacle, in order to fix the world, to heal the world, that the world becomes a recipient of the divine presence in a greater way. In order to make God greater. So these three tzaddikim were saying, wow, if I would have known, I could have done a greater Kiddush Hashem, sanctification of God's name. Okay? Everybody, they're into one thing. How do we sanctify God's name in a greater way? Okay? Every single direction, every single function, every single thought, every single intention is for that and that only. How do we make God's name greater? So if I would have known, if Reuben would have known, right, that God was going to write this, I would have done it. If Aaron would have known, I would have came out with the Rolling Stones. It would have played Mick Jagger, right? I would have hired Mick Jagger, right? No. Anyways, if I would have known, if Boaz would, I would have made, right? I would have had a fat cow, okay? And now comes the last one, okay? And we're going to end with here, the fourth example. Rabbi Cohen, Rabbi Yeshua, the Sachnin, B'Shem Rabbi Levi, in the name of Rabbi Levi. They continue this midrash and says, in the past, it was that if a man would do a mitzvah, he would do something special. The prophet at the time would write it down. Each person, their own Megillah. Let's say you had a neighborhood prophet. Umbel has a prophet, whatever, Maurice Blasnalis, who was the prophet. So, he would know what everybody's doing, and he would write, and you'd have your own little Megillah. If a person did something of a mitzvah, the prophet would write it down. Now, you don't have prophets anymore. So what happens? And now, mitzvah, when a person does a mitzvah, who writes it? Who writes it? So it says Eliyahu writes it. Elijah the prophet, he writes it. And the King Messiah and the Holy One, blessed be He, they stamp it. And then those who fear God will speak each man to his friend. In other words, nowadays things are still being written. The Torah is not necessarily a sealed book. If you look actually in the second parsha of the book of Numbers, there's an interesting weird thing where there's two inverted nuns. Right? They're upside down and inverted. And it brings that down that really there's not 5 books of Moses, there's 7 books of Moses. Because that's a divider. In between those two nuns is a whole book, which is really 2 verses. And then there's a book before and there's a book after. So really in the book of Numbers there's 3 books. So really it's a total 7 books. But they say those 2 nuns and those 2 verses in there, in a very deep and Kabbalistic way, all of the letters permutate and recombine, and every single little thing that has happened will be recombined and reconfigured, and the Torah is still being written from those letters. It's still being written. And here comes the point. The point here is that when we're faced with challenges, and these are the Masa'ot, and these are the 42 travelings, and a lot of times it's going to be stop-and-go traffic. I'm talking about in your life, not necessarily on, West Belfort, okay? Or whatever street. But in your life, it seems to be you're hitting a wall. How are you going to accept it? How are you going to face it? What direction are you going to bring yourself to? So the idea here is one Ivdu et Hashem b'simcha, or mitzvah gedola liot b'simcha tamid. It's a special, rare opportunity every time that you're facing one of those 42 travelings. It's a challenge. You have to be able to know that the book is still being written. And here comes your challenge. And what are you going to do? How are you going to react to that? Are you going to say, this comes from Hashem? Comes from God, and it's part of my tikkun. It's part of my rectification. It's going to bring me to a greater place. This will bring me to a greater place. I don't know how. I don't have to know how. God's going to show you how after. Can we accept it with faith? Can we accept every single thing and meet the challenge and go way overboard? It's work. But the bottom line is we're all in a process. It's happening whether we like it or not. God is making us a vehicle to receive the infinite light. It's a 42-step process, 42-path recovery, or whatever you want to call it. Just another little thing I'll add at the end. So, it's to face it with joy, with unbelievable joy, that it's for absolutely the absolute best, and to have absolute emunah and faith in God to the nth degree, okay? And it is for us. Rabbi Nachman brings down, it's unbelievable, when a soul is created, and it comes from the spiritual realm, it's not complete. It's not complete. You think it's complete, it's a whole soul. It's not complete. It doesn't have it. She doesn't have her garment. She doesn't have her garment. Only when she comes into this world and she follows the mitzvot and she follows the Torah, she follows the principles and aligns herself with each one of those principles, she gets a garment. And only when she leaves this world does she have that proper dressing, the proper one, right? So each and every time that you do something unique, something special, you extend yourself, you do chesed. What was it? Chesed, emunah, emunah. Faith. What was the song that Dror was singing with you? Every single time you do one of those, it's adding another garment to your soul. That when we leave this world, God willing, there'll be enough garments that you won't be able to find yourself at the party, because Rabbi Nachman brings down, in this world we understand a person who doesn't have food and doesn't have clothes, you see them, it's a rachmanas, it's a sad situation. You can go and get for them something, you can go and get for them some food, you can get for them some clothes. In the next world there isn't any situation. If a person doesn't have any clothes, that's it. There's no one can go and grab him from something. It's not happening. Not happening. So we should all have a blessing, okay? Now, wherever we are in the 42 travelings, in the 42 journeys, we have to strengthen ourselves. Unbelievable. And think the thoughts, if I only knew, right? Because the Torah is still being written, and you're being written. There's a Megillah about you, each and every one of you. It's being written. And here's the time. Here's the test where you can express something beyond or outside of yourselves. Take the opportunity and accept the challenge. Okay? Accept it with love, and accept that it's from God. Strengthen in Emunah, and do it with joy.